Alright guys, welcome back to Hapesy Games, and today I'm covering Resident Evil Revelations on the Wii U. Now I'm actually going to be talking about why I believe this game has directly influenced the Resident Evil games we are playing today. And in a way it actually changed the course of which was pretty much set by Resident Evil 4, and I'll get into that shortly. But what we will cover as well is the general features of the gameplay, and also maybe some specifics around the Wii U itself and what the pad does and doesn't add to the gameplay, if that makes sense.
Resident Evil Revelations.
So I think it makes sense to have a bit of a look at the transition period for Resident Evil. When Resident Evil 4 launched, Resident Evil 5 and 6, it really started the action era of Resident Evil. Beginning with 4, but to be fair to 4, it was an incredible game. And it did have some horror moments. But when it started moving in towards 5 and 6, it started becoming more and more clear that it was getting even more action orientated and less about the horror. And the issue I had with 5 and 6, I'll be clear first and foremost, I had tons of fun with both those games, believe it or not. If you take them as they're actually really fun action games. But that's the thing, they're action games. So if you were expecting Resident Evil and you were expecting horror, you didn't get that. So when you look fundamentally then at 5 and 6, I think the issue with 5 was it uses the over-the-shoulder control scheme. However, when you had to move forward, you run back, but you can't step left and right. And that hampered the experience for a lot of people, I believe, and especially considering the amount of action involved in the game itself. So control scheme really didn't match the lofty action ambitions that was in Resident Evil 5. Another thing that was interesting to me at the time is Resident Evil Revelations and Resident Evil 6 actually launched within the same year, and when you compare both games, they're radically different in their tone, their setting, and essentially I think the real, I suppose, core Resident Evil fan base got more enjoyment fundamentally from Resident Evil Revelations at the time on the 3DS when it came out than they did with the frontline main Resident Evil 6 title that came out on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And in particular, when you talk about Resident Evil Revelations, there was actually an attachment for the 3DS that added a second analog to the right. So it actually allowed you to play dual analog. Now, obviously, I'm taking a look at the Wii U version, which has two analogs anyway on the gamepad. But I suppose that kind of additional peripheral that was added to the 3DS to give you more control of your character, i.e. you were able to move forward, left, strafe right, and do complete 360 turns without having to stop your character. And that was very similar to how Resident Evil 6 functioned. But again, the fundamental differences being Resident Evil Revelations finds a lovely blend of horror and action. And I'll go into how that's actually segmented and structured within the game shortly. So let's elaborate on what I mean by blend. Now fundamentally, Resident Evil Revelations is built up in segments or episodes, they're called. And these episodes probably only last about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes max. But it spaces them out, and you have to bear in mind, the core structure was built with handheld in mind. So kind of pick up and play a game, and you could drop it, do an episode, and then play it again another day. But there was also another reason why it was split up episodically. So as I mentioned, it has kind of a double feel to it. It has a slow, methodical, horror-based feel when you're playing Jill's campaign specifically. And then you could have a follow-on episode after that, which is more action-orientated. You're either playing Chris. It kind of blends it up and mixes it up that way. Obviously, a lot of the core fan base prefer Jill's campaign outright, but it's nice to get the nice blend, and it mixes up the gameplay and it gives it great variety in my opinion, and it actually appeases both fan bases for this very reason. The other thing that the episodic style adds is it allows them kind of to evenly distribute the mission styles and also the story itself, because it kind of features a lot of missions that are in the past and then some in the present, and it kind of backfills the story that way, and it kind of links up the story in the very end of the game. But anyway, back to the Jill campaign. I'm going to concentrate on that now, because I suppose that's the core element of the game, and I suppose it's probably what everybody loved the most about this. Not to say that the other action-orientated episodes aren't good. So essentially, it's really a back to roots feel about Resident Evil Revelation and the core Jill campaign itself. It's got like the locked rooms, there's scenarios where it actually you even lose your weapons and you just have to evade enemies, and the music, the atmosphere, it's dready, it's moody, and yeah, it genuinely feels creepy, and that's what Resident Evil to me was always all about. And yes, you can get that nice blend of action. As I said, I've repeated it multiple times here, I loved the action games as well, 4, 5 and 6, but yeah, they stand out on their own. And this one here is really kind of a return to the roots of Resident Evil from a horror perspective, but modernising it, remember, modernising it because of the controls itself. I actually think the control scheme is very, very fluid, and in particular on the Wii U pad, and it also utilises the touchpad and in neat and not overused ways. In this particular segment here, I'm completing the puzzle. I'm under quite under pressure here because this zombie, whatever you want to call them, freakazoids, whatever the fuck they're called, that guy's coming after me, and it's kind of, you got to be really, really quick with the gamepad, so it puts you under pressure. The other thing is to point to note is you do spend a lot of time with your partner in this, but sometimes you get split up from time to time. So when you're taking on enemies, it depends where you're taking them on. He helps you out. This is kind of something similar that you would have saw in 5 and 6 anyway, but it does it better, I think, here. Again, the atmosphere to me is much more moody. Another thing to note is it graphically holds up pretty well, in my opinion. Again, ground level, built with the 3DS, and it's obviously been upscaled for the Wii U, the Xbox 360, PS3, PS4, Xbox One, etc. Those versions. But yeah, it does hold up really well. But my preference here is to play the Wii U version because I think something was lost when they made the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U, because you don't really get use of a gamepad anymore and you don't get that interaction, and it's incorporated kind of the 3DS features here. I know it might sound simplistic to say, but it's got a map. You can quickly select your items through the touchpad, and I get great use out of it, and I have done for a lot of games on the Wii U, and it makes great use of it here as well. So two neat features straight off the bat with the Wii U version. You can actually play on the TV solely, you can use the gamepad, or you can use a combination of both. And a combination of both is the way I played this, and it's really, really intuitive and practical. The other thing I really enjoy about Resident Evil Revelations is the return of an item box. You can upgrade your weapons, and yeah, the puzzle aspects, so solving puzzles, finding items, unlocking doors, all of that stuff that was pretty much not present in 5 and 6. And that's all kind of brought back in this. It gives it, exploration. There is some backtracking like you would get with the old games as well. And then for me, again, the key word is balance. So it's finely balanced when they want to ramp up the action and blend it in. And this particular segment is actually part of the Jill campaign, but it's a sudden burst of action, nicely blended in between the slower moments within the game. This part is particular kind of a pressure scenario, something similar to what you get in 4 and 5 and maybe 6, but again, it doesn't overdo it, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's neatly done. I think maybe my biggest criticism about the Jill campaign, probably in particular, is enemy variety. It's really kind of only one real enemy in her campaign, but there's a lot of variations of those enemies. They are actually quite creepy. They make really, really weird noises. And as I said, there is multiple types of them, but they're kind of grey, muddy looking, and they'll all look fairly similar. So maybe that's the only thing I would probably nitpick about. A little bit more enemy variety would have helped here. So maybe I think what I'll do is I'll finish up the video by just kind of reiterating why I feel this actually set the course for what we are seeing now with Resident Evil 2 Remake, 3, etc., which again are really, really great blends of horror and action. And that's, I think, what the core fan base really, really wanted. They wanted that old style horror, but definitely brought to a new age. It couldn't have been another isometric game. I don't think anyone was asking for that. But It just had to bring it to the modern age, but didn't have to lose what was so great about the original games. Guys, if you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing to the channel and let me know what you think of this game, and you know, share your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.